Hello, my name is Paul Farmer, and Open Book Publishing has just published my book, After the Miners' Strike, A39 and Cornish Theatre versus Thatcher's Britain, which is to an extent fairly self-explaining, but the book is a story, and it's the story of a theatre company. In 1983, I moved here to Cornwall to study boat building, but then I'd been a bus driver before that, so I was invited to join this theatre company called Miracle Theatre, who had just bought a bus, and they needed someone to drive it, so they chose me. And over the months that came after that, I slowly moved into playing music with them as well, and then into performing with them as well. So we toured all the way through 1984. And of course, in the March of 1984 began the great miners' strike in the British coalfields. So there was I driving this bus full of equipment from place to place, setting up this huge pyramid tent to perform in, and working really hard doing this. And all the time, the country was really in a state of a quiet civil war, because that's what it felt like to live through the miners' strike. And I became aware that this was not a rewarding experience while this was going on. I somehow wanted to participate and support the miners' strike. So after the tour finished, a group of us got together and we formed A39 Theatre Group, and we began to formulate ways that we might support the miners' strike through our performance work. So we made a play about Cornish mining. Cornwall's got a great history of mining of tin and copper in particular, and the village I was living in actually was a pit village for two tin mines nearby. And from this we started drawing together a play that would summon up the issues of the miners' strike through retelling Cornish history. And the miners' strike finished, but we continued because we also realised that actually supporting the aims of the miners' strike was very important in Cornwall in terms of preserving and serving community. So this is the story of the plays we made to do this, and the ways we set about performing them and building an audience here in Cornwall. Now, of course, this is an academic publishers, and all this was informed by a couple of theorists in particular. First of all, John McGrath, who was a great playwright and one of the founders of 784 Theatre Company, and performing plays very famously such as the Cheviot, the Stag, and the Black Oil, about the history of Scotland, very similar in some ways to what we were doing in Cornwall. So his writing, particularly his book A Good Night Out, was very important. But later on, the theories of Bertolt Brecht became very significant to us in particular. The ideas of epic theatre, what kinds of theatre you could do to create the ability to communicate complicated arguments in ways that didn't insult the audience. The audience could assess the ideas you were presenting them with. We weren't writing them down on tablets of stone. So we also talked a lot about the comparison of theatre as a kind of elitist art form in comparison to, for example, popular music. And we drew lots of lessons from the performance of modern music. Some of us were very experienced in that kind of field in particular. So we formulated our material very much in the same kind of way, in some ways. But there's other things that the book's about. The book is about art. What is art for? What can you do with it? Who can do it? Who is allowed to do it? How is it funded? How does that work? Is this in some way selecting and steering the kind of work we're seeing? This was very, very important to us because, of course, we were politically inclined, and it was very important to us to analyse our own industry, because we've now surprisingly found ourselves to be professional theatre artists and performers. So it was really important that we kind of actually drew a bead also on the ways that the culture industry and the heritage industry in Britain actually works. This was kind of really significant. That kind of analysis didn't make us very popular. So it's also about the kind of relationships that grew up. But it's also about the kind of forming of common bonds with other theatre workers that we found in the foundation of the Cornwall Theatre Alliance in Cornwall, which had some sort of very profound effects, really. And we were working at the same kind of time as the early years of Miracle Theatre that I performed with, but also Knee-High Theatre, who came to be very important in British theatre generally. So it's about the kind of roots of that kind of work as well. It's also the history and the implications of the miners' strike in terms of the UK that we live in now. And this is not all hindsight. It was apparent to us and to the miners at the time that this struggle with the Thatcher government was seminal, and it would define the future of Britain for the foreseeable future, and it has. And we're still living with the results. And so if you've suffered a long wait to get an NHS operation, for example, well, the foundations of all that are back there. So this is about a very significant time in the history of Britain. Probably, I'd say, not sufficiently appreciated. It's not been sufficiently appreciated and argued how formative those years were. So that's it. This is volume 1 of the work. Volume 2 is to come, which will look more at issues of playwriting, of community theatre and what that meant, of the community arts movement and what that meant. These are very radical movements which have now pretty much died, and pretty much it's pretty important that people appreciate there has been this history in the culture of Britain in the recent past, that things can be very much richer, and we then go on to draw lessons for possibly the future of certain kinds of theatre in the light of that in the years to come. Thank you.